You ever sit at a dinner table and realize you're the only one there who doesn't belong? Not because of how you act, but because of how they look at you? Yeah, that's how it all started for me. My name's Riley. That's what folks around the neighborhood called me since I was 10, probably because I've always been more tired than I should be. I'm 29 now, and even though life's changed a lot, there are certain things you just don't forget. Like the first time someone looked at you and decided you were less. I grew up in a rundown part of Oakland, in a one-bedroom apartment with my mom. She was a waitress at this 24-hour diner off MacArthur Boulevard. People came and went from that place, but my mom was a fixture. Always on her feet, always smiling even when her back was killing her. I never knew my dad, and honestly, I never missed what I never had. It was just the two of us, and we got by. When I was 17, I became close friends with a guy named Ben. He was one of the few kids from the neighborhood who didn't act like he was above the rest of us, even though his family clearly had more. His mom, Mrs. Sylvia, was a middle school teacher and the type of woman who always had a fresh manicure and corrected your grammar mid-sentence. Ben was cool, though. He'd come over to my place, eat microwave burritos with me, and play video games like we had no problems in the world. One day, Ben invited me over for dinner at his house. It was the first time I ever stepped inside a place that had matching curtains and a dining table that wasn't also used as a desk or a laundry station. I wore the only decent shirt I had and brought a pie my mom made. I still remember how proud she was, wrapping it up in foil like it was treasure. We sat down to eat. Ben, his mom, his stepdad, and me. At first, it was quiet. A little too quiet. His mom kept glancing at me like she was trying to place where she'd seen me before. Then, halfway through dinner, she set her fork down and asked me, "So, Riley, what do you plan to do after high school?" I told her I was hoping to get into a trade program or maybe community college if I could swing the tuition. She raised one eyebrow, took a sip of her wine, and said, right in front of everyone, "Ben, you really should be mindful of who you spend time with. Not everyone grows up with ambition." I felt like someone had kicked me in the chest. I looked at Ben. He went pale, but didn't say anything. Just kept staring at his plate. His stepdad cleared his throat and tried to change the subject, but it was already out there, like grease on a clean shirt. I sat there, finished my dinner, thanked them politely, and walked home with that damn pie tin under my arm like it was a trophy in shame. I never told my mom what happened. I just said they were nice. But something cracked in me that night. Not from what she said, but from the way she said it. Like she wasn't even trying to hide it. Like my whole life could be dismissed with one sentence over mashed potatoes. That was the last time I stepped into their house. Ben texted a few times after that, asked why I stopped hanging out. I didn't answer. It wasn't his fault. But I needed space. I needed to remind myself that I didn't have to prove anything to people who already made up their minds about me. That was 12 years ago. I've lived a lot of life since then. Some of it broke me. Some of it built me back stronger. And until recently, I hadn't thought about Mrs. Sylvia in years. But last month, I got a client file on my desk. I'm a senior advisor now at a private financial firm. The kind of firm people come to when their lives are unraveling and they need someone calm, focused, and smart to help them rebuild. The name on the file? Sylvia Lancaster. And when she walked into my office, I don't think she even recognized me. She walked in wearing that same perfume I remembered from back then. Light, powdery, and cold somehow. Just like her. Sylvia Lancaster. My childhood's most vivid reminder that some people don't see you until they need something. She didn't recognize me. Not even a flicker of recognition. Just glanced around my office like it wasn't up to her standards, even though she was the one walking in here broke and scared. I stood, shook her hand, firm but not warm. She sat, crossed her legs, and exhaled like she was used to being in charge of every room she entered. "I was told you're handling this account now," she said, flipping open her folder. "I need to know what my options are." She talked fast, polished, almost robotic. Like if she spoke with enough certainty, maybe reality would listen. Her retirement fund had taken a hit in that investment scandal last year. Turns out she'd poured everything into one advisor, some friend of her late husband. And when it crashed, she was left holding the dust. Now she was trying to piece together whatever scraps she had left before her mortgage caught up with her. I listened, took notes, kept my voice even. Part of me wanted to lean back in my chair and ask if she remembered telling a 17-year-old boy he had no future. Wanted to ask if she remembered that pie my mom baked, or the way her words made me feel like the dirt under her shoes. But I didn't. I just asked her to walk me through her current liabilities because that's what I was paid to do. Halfway through, she sighed and said, "I just don't understand how this happened. I always made the right choices. I was careful. I planned everything." And there it was. The thing that hit me harder than anything else she said. Because that was always her worldview. That if you ended up struggling, it had to be your fault. That good people with good values never hit rock bottom. That people like me back then just didn't try hard enough. I kept it together. I kept it professional. But inside, I was boiling. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted her to see, not just me, the truth. I spent the next hour breaking down her options. What little she had left was tied up in a risky annuity plan. I told her we could salvage part of it, but she'd have to adjust expectations. I offered her a conservative portfolio that might stretch what she had for the next 12 to 15 years, if she was careful. She looked at me, and for the first time, she seemed unsure of herself. "You really think I'll be okay?" I nodded. "If you're disciplined and realistic." And then she asked, "How long have you been in this field?" I smiled. Not wide, just enough. Long enough to know people don't always end up where they thought they would. There was a pause. The room went quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, maybe even apologize. But the words didn't come. People like her don't apologize. They redirect. "Well, I appreciate your help," she said. "I hope I can rely on your judgment." Before she left, I handed her a packet with a few investment options and said, "Take your time with these. Sleep on them." She thanked me and walked out like nothing unusual had happened. But here's the twist. She came back 2 days later. Not for financial help. For me. She'd found out. Somehow through Ben or some old photo, I'm not sure. But when she walked into my office that second time, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her voice cracked. "It's you." From that dinner. I nodded once. Didn't say anything. And then she asked the one question I never expected to hear from her. "Why didn't you say something?" I stood, walked over to the window, and looked out for a moment before turning back to her. "Because," I said, "you only would have listened now." After she left my office the second time, after realizing who I was, I expected something. A follow-up email, a call, maybe even a short apology, just a sentence or two to acknowledge what happened that night over a decade ago. But you know what came? Nothing. Just silence. The kind that says louder than words, "Let's pretend this never happened." And maybe that would have been fine, if she was just another client, just another name in a folder I could file away. But then Ben reached out. He wanted to grab coffee. Said he'd been meaning to catch up. I agreed. I hadn't seen him since that awkward text exchange back in college, and to be honest, a part of me missed the guy. He was my friend once, and even if things had gotten weird, that never fully went away. We met up at a quiet place near Lake Merritt. He looked older, a little worn down, like life had taken a few swings at him too. But he smiled big when he saw me. We talked for almost 2 hours, about work, life, the old neighborhood. Then he brought up his mom. "She told me you're the one helping with her portfolio," he said, kind of sheepishly. "Said you were professional, respectful, but I could tell something rattled her. She's not used to being seen like that." I didn't say much. just sipped my coffee and let him talk. Then he leaned in and said, "She's scared, man. Like, really scared. She'll never admit it, but this whole situation, it's cracked something in her." I nodded. I get it, but that doesn't change what she said to me back then. Ben went quiet, then said, "She doesn't remember saying it." That hit me harder than I thought it would. She didn't even remember. The words that made me question my own worth, that stuck to me like glue all these years, weren't even memorable to her. Just something she tossed off in passing, like a piece of lint on her sweater. But I remembered. Every damn syllable. That's when I realized this wasn't just about her. This was about me. Who I became, and who I let her define me as for too long. So I made a decision. I emailed her a few days later and asked her to come in. Told her we needed to finalize the reallocation strategy before the end of the quarter. She showed up on time with that same perfect posture. She sat across from me and smiled a little too politely. "I appreciate you taking the time," she said. "I know I wasn't the easiest client." I nodded. "You're here. That's what matters." I walked her through the last few details of the plan, but then I slid a second folder across the table. She frowned. "What's this?" I told her it was an optional program, something new we were piloting for clients over 60 who'd experienced significant loss, either financially or personally. A small group focused on rebuilding not just portfolios, but purpose. Healing the whole person, not just their bank account. She looked intrigued. "That sounds interesting." "There's a wait list," I said, "but I can get you in early, if you want." She opened the folder. Inside wasn't any program brochure. It was a letter, handwritten, on thick cream paper. It was the letter my mom wrote to me the night after that dinner, when I told her I'd never be enough for people like Mrs. Sylvia. The one that said, "You don't need to convince the world of your value. You just need to know it and never let them take it." Sylvia's hands shook as she read it. Her eyes darted across the page, then up to mine. "What is this?" she whispered. I leaned forward, calm, steady. "It's proof," I said, "that the things we say in passing leave scars that outlast bank balances." She sat back, silent. No words, just that tightness in her face. The kind that comes when you realize you're not the good guy in someone else's story. And then, right before she left, she reached into her bag, pulled out a check. She slid it across the table and said, "This was supposed to be my security blanket, but maybe it's time I invest in something better." I flipped the check over. It wasn't to my firm. It was made out to the Maribel Grant Foundation, a charity I started under my mom's name to help low-income youth get access to financial literacy. And in the memo line, she wrote, "Because I finally see. There's something strange that happens when you forgive someone without forgetting. You don't want to hurt them, but you damn sure won't bow to them again." I kept thinking about that after Sylvia wrote that check to my mom's foundation. It wasn't an apology. It was an action. And sometimes actions speak louder. But deep down, I knew this wasn't done. Not because I wanted revenge, but because she still hadn't seen it all. Not just about me, but about herself. A week later, I was invited to speak at a major conference on community-based investing. It was a big deal. Industry leaders, senior advisors, nonprofits, and a few institutional investors interested in partnering with independent foundations like mine. A few hours before I went on stage, I got a revised guest list from the event organizers. Right there, bolded in the VIP section, Sylvia Lancaster. She was attending on behalf of a retirement coalition, trying to rebuild her public image through charitable outreach. I couldn't help but smile. I wasn't mad. I wasn't rattled. But I knew. It was time. When I stepped onto that stage, the lights hit hard. I couldn't make out every face in the crowd, but I could feel hers on me. For the first time in her life, she had to sit and listen. I didn't read the speech I'd prepared. I folded it up and set it aside. Instead, I started with a story about my mother, working double shifts at the diner, about a boy growing up being told what he wasn't, and about a single sentence spoken at a dinner table that clung to him longer than any compliment ever could. I never said her name. I didn't have to. Then I talked about how quiet judgment can eat away at a young person's self-worth like acid. How polite cruelty, spoken in a calm voice with a fork in hand, can kill someone's confidence before they even get started. The room was dead silent. I heard a chair scrape somewhere in the middle rows. She was shifting, fidgeting. Then I said this. The saddest thing isn't being hurt. It's realizing the person who hurt you doesn't even remember. I paused. Not long. Just enough for it to sink in. And then I smiled. But sometimes they don't need to remember. Sometimes you just need them to walk into a room they once thought they owned and realize the story being told isn't about them anymore. It's about the one they tried to ignore. Afterward, people shook my hand, asked about the foundation, offered support. And in the very back of the room, I saw her, Sylvia. She didn't come over, but she heard every word. And that was enough for me. I thought it ended there. But the next morning, when I got to my office, my assistant handed me a gray envelope. No return address, no name. Inside was a bank transfer receipt. Sylvia's remaining investment funds, over $240,000, had been transferred in full to the Maribel Grant Foundation, my mother's charity. No memo, no signature, just the receipt. I said nothing. I walked it over to the vault and locked it inside. Because for the first time in my life, I understood something. She had finally listened. And she didn't need to say she was sorry. She just let me rewrite her definition of worth. A week after the donation hit our books, I got a call I wasn't expecting. It was from a board member of the retirement coalition Sylvia was supposedly representing. Polite, but firm. He asked if I could verify the donation they'd heard whispers about, specifically whether a large amount of pooled funds had been redirected without documented approval. I froze for half a beat. Then I checked the transaction again. And sure enough, she hadn't written the check from her personal savings. She'd taken the remainder of the coalition's shared investment pool, the fund meant to assist multiple retired educators in crisis, and funneled it directly to my foundation. Did I feel bad? Honestly, number because she didn't do it for them. She did it for herself, to erase guilt, to rewrite her image, and maybe, just maybe, to buy her way into peace. But that's not how peace works. You don't get to buy back decency. You earn it. I told the board what they needed to know. I didn't sugarcoat it, but I didn't twist the knife either. I shared the receipt. I emailed over the transfer logs. I confirmed that the donation came with no restrictions. 2 days later, she was removed from the coalition. 3 days after that, an investigative report surfaced, highlighting unauthorized allocations and ethically questionable representation. And just like that, the carefully preserved image she'd spent decades polishing cracked. Not publicly scandalous, but quietly ruined. The kind that follows you into every room, every conversation. The kind that never quite lets you feel safe again. Ben reached out again after everything broke. He didn't yell. He didn't defend her. He just asked, "Was that you?" And all I said was, "No, that was her." He sighed. "You gonna be okay?" "I already am," I said. And I meant it. Because closure doesn't always come with a headline. Sometimes it shows up in the quiet moments, when you realize you don't have to carry their weight anymore. Sylvia tried to control every room she walked into, but the one place she couldn't manage was the story I lived in. Because she didn't write it. I did. And in my story, the boy she once dismissed grew into the man who handled her fall. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. People will forget what they said to you, but your body remembers. Your heart remembers. And healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let their words decide who you are now. If you've been through something like this, if someone ever tried to shrink you down to the size of their own fear, feel free to drop your story in the comments. You don't have to go into detail if you're not ready. But sometimes just saying, "I see you," is enough. And if this story meant something to you, you can stick around. I'll be here, sharing the kind of stories most people are too afraid to tell. Thanks for listening, and for letting me tell it like it really was.